I'm Tim Churchill from Tim Talk, and today I'm with Jonathan Lott, who is a candidate running for Massachusetts State Senate for Norfolk, Bristol, and Plymouth districts, formerly held by Senator Brian Joyce. Jonathan Lott is running as an independent candidate and will face off with Democratic primary winner in the November 8th general election. Jonathan, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Tim.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm 24 years old. I'm an independent candidate. I'm from Stoughton. I was born and raised in Stoughton. I'm a town meeting rep in Stoughton, and I teach Latin and world culture at a middle and high school in Holbrook.
Interesting. All right. Can you tell us if there's a special reason that you're running as state senator?
Well, I wouldn't say there's one reason exactly. I think the biggest problem in Massachusetts is the opioid epidemic. So that's my number one priority. It's getting worse and worse every year. That's the issue that is driving my campaign, but there are so many other reasons. We talk about clean energy, fixing the MBTA, getting housing prices down, taxes. This year, since Brian Joyce is not running for re-election, it's the best opportunity for an independent candidate or for somebody else to win an election as senator. It's an open seat, and 2016 is definitely the year of the anti-establishment independent candidate. So the demographics have never looked more favorably for me than they will this year.
Can you explain what are the responsibilities of state senator?
Okay, so the responsibilities of a state senator is basically to do what his or her constituents, the people who live in his or her district, want them to do. So most of the time it's going to mean voting on bills that make its way through the Massachusetts legislature. Oftentimes it's going to come to actually writing bills or co-sponsoring them and building support and consensus among other legislators to get that stuff passed. If you think of it, basically they're the people who make the rules that everyone else has to play by, or they're the ones who get rid of the rules that already exist that people are stuck playing with. And they have to do that as fairly as possible and taking as much direction as they can from the people who live in the districts that voted for them.
Sounds like a very important role. What towns does your seat cover?
Okay, so it covers all of or parts of Avon, Braintree, Canton, Easton, East Bridgewater, Milton, Sharon, Stoughton, Randolph, and West Bridgewater.
Okay. Wow, it's a pretty big district. What skills do you think you have that will help Massachusetts?
Well, I'm a great communicator, and I have a lot of patience. As a teacher, it's a must. So I also bring a lot of knowledge about the education system. As a teacher, I was actually in the classroom, unlike most of the other candidates statewide. I have a great intuition. I have a good personality. I'm friendly. Did I mention I'm patient? And I'm a great listener. If it sounds like I'm not talking for 5-10 minutes on each question, like some politicians would want to stretch it out, it's because I listen a lot more than I do talk.
Well, you need a lot of communication skills to cooperate with your colleagues. So.
No doubt.
Can you tell us what are your 3 greatest priorities for Massachusetts?
Okay. All right. So priority 1, the opioid epidemic. It's getting worse and worse every year. And I don't think that we have done enough to combat that. So I think we need to bring Gloucester's Angel Plan to every city and town in Massachusetts. I think we need to have one-to-one needle exchanges in every police station in the state. I think we need to expand Narcan availability, get it in high schools, get it in popular areas, public bathrooms, fast food places that are frequented by people who use drugs. So opioid epidemic is number 1. Number 2, it's kind of hard to rate the rest. I would say the cost of housing and just living in general, rent or mortgages or whatever you want to call it, it's the number 1 expense that most people have unless they are crippled by student loans or horrible medical debt. I really think we need to tear apart zoning laws and incentivize developers to build a lot more starter homes, micro apartments, lower end condos, and basically saturate the market with so much more housing that prices will be forced to drop and that people will actually be able to afford them. Because 30, 40 years ago, somebody who was my age, they could work for 8 years in a factory and make the income necessary to buy themselves a home that today would cost $300,000 that they would end up paying for over 30 years. You just can't you can't pay for you can't pay for it for housing anymore. It's just too expensive, especially in Boston, where
That's right.
the average rent in Boston for like a one bedroom, it's probably over $2,000. It's driving out so many people, and developers, they're really just building luxury condos for super wealthy Americans or wealthy foreigners who are coming in for college, and they're just taking up land that we could be using for regular people. And then third, I would say reforming our public transportation system. The MBTA is a disaster. It's been mismanaged for decades. It's saddled with billions of dollars of debt. We had late night coverage on the T in Boston that got shut down in March or April, and people are still going forward with this stupid South Coast Rail project. So really, you see it as a chain, sort of, in that the MBTA is mismanaged. They don't put enough work into their trains. The quality drops, and they raise prices. This drives people away from using public transportation. And then when people say, oh, we need to fix public transportation, the MBTA says, why fix it? Nobody's riding it. But nobody's riding it because it's so bad.
Fixed.
Yeah.
About the opioid epidemic, a few months ago I attended a DARE program that showed a video of probably 100 or 150 people that had died just from maybe one or two different drugs in just the past year and a half, in only the Bridgewaters and Whitman, I believe. So I would agree with your stance on the opioid epidemic. What changes would you like to see in Massachusetts if you were elected?
Well, the big change, if I get elected as an independent, I will be the only independent legislature in the House of Representatives or the Senate. So hopefully I will serve as an inspiration for lots of other independent or minor party candidates throughout the state to actually run against uncontested Democrats, because over 2/3 of our legislature are Democrats who are running unopposed. If we're talking about actual laws and rules that I want to have done, I mentioned the opioid epidemic, Gloucester Plan, needle exchanges 1-to-1 all across the state. I think we need to increase the bottle deposit from 5 cents to 10 cents. I think we need to also, this is kind of a little obscure one, I think we need to fine heavily or just ban outright radio stations broadcasting from Boston that broadcast songs or advertisements that contain emergency signals like sirens and fake car crashes. That as a driver, you're too young to know this yet, but as a driver, you're driving along, listening to the radio, and then you hear a siren in an ad or in a song, in the intro to a song, and it's pretty startling. And then
I've seen that.
And then you have thousands of people
Extremely irritating
across the whole state who are listening to this radio station. I just think it's a setup for an accident. Another thing I'd like to do, they call it the Fair Share Amendment, which is an amendment that would, it's going through the legislature right now, that would raise the income tax, the Massachusetts income tax, on income over $1 million by 4%. And that requires an amendment to the Massachusetts Constitution, so there needs to be a lot of support for that. I could go on and on, but let's get on.
Who are some of your role models growing up?
My role models. I get asked this question every once in a while, and I never really know what a great answer to give to be for it. Because it's hard for me to pick role models other than my parents growing up, who were, my parents and teachers are the people that you hang around with the most, the adult figures in your life. Although, growing up, I wouldn't say I had any major role models that I kind of followed throughout my life. I like to think that I kind of steered my own ship.
Oh, that's nice. What are your opinions on the 4 ballot questions in November?
Okay.
And the first one is the increased access to public charter schools initiative, which would authorize the approval of up to 12 new charter schools or enrollment expansions in existing charter schools by the Board of State of Elementary and Secondary Education per year.
Yep.
So, what would be your opinion on the increased access to
Okay,
private
so charter school, that's ballot question 2 this November. I will be voting in favor of actually lifting the cap, which is not something that most public school teachers would actually support. I do think charter schools, they're definitely tricky. There are some that are just absolutely failing, but there are also some that are doing a great job. It's a mixed bag, and I think we need to change the way that charter schools are authorized in this state. I think that before a charter school is built in a town like, say, West Bridgewater, which just had a new high school, so you don't need a charter school. But if someone were trying to get a charter school built in West Bridgewater, I think that the selectmen of West Bridgewater, you have selectmen here, I believe, or the town at large would it'd have to be a townwide ballot initiative, or the selectmen would have to vote in favor of it. I don't want for-profit, out-of-state companies kind of weaseling their way in and then getting a charter school built where there is no actual public support of it. So I also don't think we should have for-profit companies that are being, funded by shadow money from New York or wherever, that just kind of basically come in and are subsidized by the taxpayers. But I do think that innovation does not tend to come from the public sector, and that there are things being done in charter school. They have a lot more leeway to try new educational tactics and strategies, and I think that's great, because people who teach in Massachusetts and other places, there are a lot of regulations, a lot of restrictions. We do have the best education system in the entire state, so I don't think that really we should change the recipe too much. But there are definitely places in Massachusetts that benefit from charter schools, and the proof of that is the popularity of charter schools in these areas. Hyde Park, Boston, parents want more charter schools, and if you talk to the students who go to these charter schools, or the parents who have students who go to them, most of them support the charter schools.
All right. How do you feel about the expanded gaming initiative?
Okay, so that would be ballot question 1. It would allow, I believe, 1 more additional slots license.
Additional slots.
Theoretically, I'm okay with it. I was okay with the casino, or I don't know what year it was, but they're still shopping around for where they want to build this casino. It was going to be in Brockton for a while, and then
2 years ago.
And they pulled it. But practically speaking, we're all okay with it until it affects us. So, and slots, they don't really add anything to a town. Like at least, like if you go to a real casino, you have card games, you have, there might be some entertainment. Maybe you have, horse racing or something, which has its own problems. But slots, they don't really add anything to a community or anything for that matter, really. So I'll be voting against the slots initiative.
All right. How do you feel about the farm animal containment initiative, which would prohibit certain methods of farm animal containment?
That'd be ballot question 3. I actually don't know how I'm going to vote on this one yet. I don't know I don't know enough about this. I'm leaning to vote against it because basically it's going to make your eggs or your produce, or not your produce, your meat more expensive, and the cost of living is already pretty high. And I think that if people had the if they want to buy, farm, organic, fair trade, whatever you want to call it, good condition eggs or whatever, they can go to the store, they can buy it. Vote with your dollar. Just don't buy the meat that was, improperly raised.
Exactly.
And I'm not entirely sure, but I've heard from some people that it will that this ballot initiative also increases the restrictions on out-of-state produce, not produce, I keep saying produce, out-of-state meat and eggs, so that I'm not sure about this again, but maybe Massachusetts could not sell eggs that came from Rhode Island that were not harvested or found or whatever, using the same way. So in that way, you're going to lower the supply of all this meat or eggs or whatever that you get from farm animals in Massachusetts, and the demand is still there because there are almost 7 million people in the state. Prices are going to go up, and people are going to be mad, and they're not going to connect it in their head with this ballot initiative.
All right. How do you feel about the marijuana legalization initiative,
Okay.
which would legalize recreational marijuana for individuals at least 21 years old?
Yeah, so I'm definitely in favor of this. I collected a few signatures for it and sent them in. Full disclosure, I have smoked marijuana. You're too young, so don't do it, Tim. But I think really it shouldn't have been made illegal in the first place. Studies have shown that it's way better than alcohol. Colorado has been a great success in almost every metric. And Massachusetts, even though we're going to tax it when it gets passed, and it will get passed, but we're going to tax it at a much lower rate than Colorado. It's going to be 3.75 with an additional optional 2% per town. That is going to bring, I would say, in the first year of the stores being operational, the first 12 months, I think it's going to bring over $70 million of revenue into Massachusetts, which we can use to fund opioid prevention programs, needle exchanges. We can put it into education, into our roads. Maybe we can put it into the MBTA. The drug war has been a failure. Prohibition, I think, has been an absolute disaster. And it does have medical benefits. We have medical marijuana, which is great, but I think we need to go farther, and it should be legalized for people's freedom, and it's overdue. And we can also be the leader on the East Coast when it comes to the marijuana market, because Colorado, Oregon, Washington, they have solidified the West's control of this industry. Maine and Massachusetts are going to vote for it this November.
Oh, I didn't know Maine was having that.
I believe 7 states,
similar
might be a few more. But anyway, it's going to be legal in the next 10 years nationwide. When it is legal nationwide, do we want to be the people who have the infrastructure, the businesses, the regulations, and the knowledge and the industry in place already? Or do we want to have to play catch up when it actually, finally reaches us?
All right. What would you most like voters to know about you?
I would like voters to know that I'm an independent. So I'm not beholden to either of the two parties. I'm not going to take orders from party bosses. I'm not going to stoop down to kiss the ring of Mr. Baker or Mr. Rosenberg. That I'm working for you, and I'll be the most accessible state senator you've ever had. I'm going to give up my phone number right now if you're listening at home. So this is a phone number. It goes right to my cell phone. Take out your phone. 857-302-0639. I don't think many politicians are going to give out their phone numbers, and I do this because I want people to actually contact me. I don't want to be a senator that hides behind various office aides and barriers and email filters and that never reaches their constituents, because I don't think that's how a government should be run. Governments tend to work better, like all organizations, when they work from the bottom up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not your conventional senator, but I am a better senator.
All right. If anybody wants to know more about your campaign, where would they go to look?
They can go to Lott2016.com, LOTT2016.com. You can follow me on Twitter at Mr. John Lott, JONLOTT. You can search for me on Facebook. You can just search John Lott for Massachusetts. And then my phone number, I'll give it again, is 857-302-0639.
All right. Is there any closing remarks that you'd like to add?
I think we got most of it. So my name is John Lott. That's what I really want you to remember, my name, because when it comes down to November and you are looking at the ballot, you're going to see some Democrat, and you're going to see John Lott, an independent, a better choice on the ballot. And hopefully, whether it doesn't matter to me whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. I think we can build a lot of consensus and say that sometimes the Republicans have better ideas than Democrats, and sometimes Democrats have better ideas than the Republicans. It's time to break the two-party system. I do think I'm going to win. I do think I can win, but I do need your vote. So I want you to please vote for me on November 8th. My name is John Lott. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here, Tim.